I thought it was crap. We walked out, me and my mate. We went up, we punked, went up and just didn't get it whatsoever. I went to, like a, I don't know, sort of audition really. I still didn't get it at all. I wasn't bothered whether I got the job or not, to be honest with you. I certainly got it though when I sat round Steve's and he played me some stuff which he'd written. And for some reason, I don't know, it sort of clicked. I thought, no, this is it. Yeah, this is great.
I have to admit that my favourite Iron Maiden albums are the first two, Iron Maiden and then Killers from 80 and 81 respectively. And if I had to choose one of the two, it would still be their debut. It's one of my favourite metal albums of all time. I think everything about that album is quite remarkable.
The first Iron Maiden album was absolutely fantastic. While they had these huge heavy metal anthems like Phantom of the Opera, which could have been done by Black Sabbath back in '72, they also had Prowler, they also had Running Free, the track itself, Iron Maiden's Gonna Get Ya. These were really, really top punk rock, full-on heavy metal jacket songs that there was no spillage, no wastage, no extended solos, just wham, bam, pow, wow, up the backside, knock you dead, rock your socks off, gear.
I think the point about the first Iron Maiden album that needs to be made is that every track on there, really, I mean, there's not filler. At all. It's back in the day when you didn't have to fill a CD with 72 minutes of music, which meant maybe if you were lucky 6 good tracks and then sort of 7 to 8 things you'll hear the first time you play the CD and probably never listen to again. It was back in the day of vinyl, so it was cherry picking the very best that you had.
I think a lot to do with it is because I think really they like to be up there as well, I think they like to imagine themselves being up on the stage, playing. I think that's probably what it is. I mean, I must admit, when I used to go and see bands before, I always thought, I'd love to be up there playing. Now it's a bit weird looking at it from the other side of the fence, if you know what I mean, like you're up there playing and the crowds all going balmy about you, and it's really weird.
Oh, I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free. Oh, yeah, running free, yeah. I'm running free,
I can't say like sort of like dramatic and we'll get lost in in the scene of the day, because I don't. I just sort of have it. It's just like pure aggression, basically. I can't hold back. Even if we've got like a 30-day tour and we do them straight, some of them straight with no days off, I can't pace my voice. I just got to do it every night. You got to have it, otherwise, I think the fans would realise if you sort of hold him back. So come on or I walk, or I just do it. If I lose my voice, I lose my voice.
Was perfect for Iron Maiden in the early days. He had an energy, an aggression, a punky attitude. He was the sort of person I would best describe, if he weren't up there on stage performing, he'd be in a street corner mugging you for your ticket to get in. That's the sort of person Di'Anno was.
The great thing about Paul Di'Anno as a frontman is that he wasn't the obvious long-haired, loon-panted, shirt open to the navel, hairy chest, Robert Plant kind of archetypal heavy metal frontman, while the rest of the band clearly were those long-haired guys with guitars. Paul absolutely wasn't that. He was a real proper East End geezer. His family background included some gypsy bloodlines. There was a slightly shady aspect to Paul. He was no stranger to the barred window, shall we say, of the local constabulary. If he hadn't been in a band, he might have been in a gang. He was also a real rough, tough guy. I mean, you wouldn't want to pick a fight with Paul. He walked it, he talked it, but he could sing. You know, he wasn't a professional singer in the sense that he knew how to look after his vocals, knew how to deliver 100% every night, and this was kind of his undoing. He was such the authentic geezer that when he was on, he was pretty bloody amazing, but he couldn't do it every night because he'd get wasted, he'd get pissed, drugged, and, you know, one show out of 3, his voice was gone, he just couldn't be bothered, didn't want to know, someone had pissed him off, someone's going to get a knuckle.
I'll tell you what, this is no word of a lie. Some bloke on Sunday in Paris come up to me and he goes, "Oh, I love you, you're the greatest singer in the world." And I sort of looked at him and was like, "You're insane, what's the matter with you?" I mean, a great singer is someone like Pavarotti or something like that, you know. I just open my gob and just go for it. I don't really know what the hell goes on with it. You know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. I can hit the notes or I can do it like death metal wise. Just have a muck about me, but it's some good fun. Well, I'll take it seriously, you know, like playing and that, but I've never thought myself as anything more than just the mouth with a man, that's it, really.
Paul Di'Anno came into the band at a very important time. They'd already been through a succession of vocalists, more typical heavy metal type vocalists, and the last of those had effectively split the band, and Steve Harris had to reassemble it from scratch. At that point, he brought back in his old mate Doug Sampson and found Dave Murray on guitar, and Paul Di'Anno came shortly after that.
Iron Maiden were probably the first of the new era of metal bands at the end of the 1970s, and what I'm talking about are the bands who succeeded through after punk had hit. And Iron Maiden were the first to really make a big impact. They got coverage in the media, especially in Sounds magazine at the time, in the late 1970s. They'd created their own buzz by doing a lot of gigs around, and at a time when heavy metal was going back on the rise, Maiden was certainly perceived right at that point, and we're talking about the end of the 1970s, as probably the most set up of all the young British metal bands to make an impact.
I mean, what is it? 7 to 8 and you can't get in a marquee?
It's like a new trend really, like punk was and new wave and mod is, and like a lot of new bands are coming through, and a lot of all that really good singles.
You can go to a punk gig and they're all got spike gear and they're, you know, in their punk gear, or disco freaks with their silly little shoes on, you know, and people see us and they know straight away that you're heavy rockers, like.
If I had £1 for every time I've seen Iron Maiden, I'd be a rich man by now.
I'm a Lloyd's underwriter actually.
It's what?
Lloyd's underwriter, right?
Do people you work with? You're right.
No, I don't like it at all. We insure all this equipment in there.
You do?
Yeah, we insure all that stuff in there.
Is that why you're here, or are you here because you love heavy metal?
I love it because I love heavy metal.
There was quite a big buzz about Iron Maiden pre-1980, and it had been building ever since sort of Neil Kay at the Soundhouse, or the bandwagon I think as it would have been back then, had sort of championed the band, and through the heavy metal disco that he ran, Sounds newspaper, music newspaper, sort of picked up on the fact that in the chart that Neil would supply, this sort of unknown or certainly unsigned band was sort of making waves.
There was an amazing buzz about Maiden before 1980. What you've got to bear in mind is that we'd had the big punk rock thing in the mid-70s, and finally a lot of British metal bands had learned from the kind of punk experience, really, insofar as they didn't need to be signed to major record labels in order to get their product out. They could self-finance their singles, which is what Iron Maiden did with a thing called the Soundhouse Tapes, which was purely done off their own backs.
The Soundhouse Tapes has become legendary. It's iconic. In terms of metal, it's almost the new wave of British heavy metal's holy grail, as it were, although we discovered it. Maiden at the end of 1978, I think Christmas Day 1978, I may be right in saying, went into Spacewood Studios in Cambridge and recorded 3 tracks, Iron Maiden, Prowler and Invasion. It was effectively a demo cum possibly a DIY release, and was actually put out in November 1979 as the Soundhouse Tapes. What it did was it encapsulated Iron Maiden on record for the nation, so that for the first time there was something we could hear on record that wasn't just seeing the band live, and it captured the imagination because it captured their energy. You actually listen back now to the sound and it's very raw, very primitive, but very Iron Maiden.
If you listen to the Soundhouse Tapes now, they don't sound very good.
There was what was to be termed the new wave of British heavy metal starting to emerge. It wasn't termed that at the time. There wasn't a genre, as it were, but there were an awful lot of young metal bands coming through in the UK around about the same period. It's one of those inexplicable facts of music in nature, I presume. You had White Spirit and Raven and Fist in the Northeast and Sledgehammer coming through. Vardis were coming out from Yorkshire. You had Def Leppard happening. You had Saxon coming through. You had the Tigers of Pantang. You had a lot of young metal bands coming through who were to be connected by the end of the 1970s by that disparate phrase, NWOBHM, the new wave of British heavy metal. But of all of them, I think even at that point, people looked at Iron Maiden as the guys most likely to succeed.
Well, following the release of the Soundhouse Tapes and the demo, that got made into a limited edition vinyl release, just 3 songs, and this is through Rod Smallwood, and they put out 5,000 copies of those to create more of a buzz about the band. Rod Smallwood told the press they'd made 15,000 to make it sound like it was a bit bigger than it was. In fact, it was only 5,000. They all sold out, and they are now fantastically collectible. If you've got one in good nick, it's worth a lot of money now. But through that recording and through their subsequent success as a live act, Rod Smallwood was able to introduce them to major record labels. And there's a nice story about 2 guys from EMI coming down to one of their shows at the Bandwagon, and they were actually unable to physically see the band because of the number of people that were in the venue. They couldn't actually see around the corner to actually look at the band because they could just see the fans wall to wall. But that was the clincher. The fact there were so many people already into the band, just kids going crazy, that it was obvious that Iron Maiden were doing serious business. Iron Maiden then headlined the marquee, and EMI finally pounced and signed them in December of '79.
Iron Maiden were quite clever in the way they signed their record deal. They had 2 labels chasing them at the end of 1979, EMI and Phonogram. Phonogram eventually signed Leopard. EMI came in and signed Iron Maiden. But the deal they had was effectively a production deal, which meant that Iron Maiden had complete freedom. They delivered the album to EMI, who then marketed it under very careful supervision or cooperation, shall we say, from the band and their manager, Rod Smallwood. Now, EMI were clever enough to realise as well that what they had here was a major institution, a band who, if they played their cards right, would make a lot of money for the company. So EMI, because they were clever in terms of business sense, went along with Maiden's ethos, Maiden's vision, because they realised this was the way forward, this is how it was going to work. And as soon as the first album came out and made it straight in at number 4 on the charts, it was obvious they had a big following already in which to build something. So I don't think there's any doubt when EMI signed Maiden, it wasn't signing a band because they wanted a metal band, it was signing Iron Maiden because they felt and they knew what Maiden had around them, not just with the band, not just with the focus, vision and drive of Steve Harris, the main man of the band, but also with their management team. Rod Smallwood and Andy Taylor were very sensible and very shrewd businessmen. This lot could go a long way.
I remember going up to the MI offices, and it was weird, you know what I mean? And God, all the photos completely different, you know, like all the boys in leather jackets. I turned up in bleeding 2-tone jacket and a pork pie hat on. Just a bit different. Yeah, it was kind of weird. I remember, I think it's the first time I ever had a glass of champagne, to be quite honest with you. Didn't like that, so we went down the pub. I think we got pissed that night, and yeah, that was it. Then we went back to hard work again. That's what we always did.
I was playing with a band called RDB, Reemerstown Boulevard. Myself and Dave Edwards, very harmony guitar based band. Steve Harris and Dave Murray used to come down to the Bridge House in Canning Town to watch RDB on certain nights. And unbeknown to me, Maiden had signed quite a big deal with EMI. And also not really knowing them that well, I was contacted by Rod Smallwood because they were looking for a guitarist, second guitarist, harmony guitarist, second backing vocalist, whatever you want to call it. And I got a call on a telegram, when I used to have telegrams in days, from Rod, and I went down and met the guys in Wardour Street, and they explained to me that they'd watched me up the Bridge House in Canning Town, and they thought that I would fit in with the second guitar, harmony guitars, and the backing vocals. So that's how we got to know one another. Well, I was in, I must admit, a not so heavy kind of music, more into the Wishbone Ash, Capability Brown, the sort of harmony guitars which I've always worked with, but Beatles, Stones, Led Zeppelin, the stuff from years ago. But we used to play with our band. We used to write our own material in RDB, and it was always based around harmony guitars and harmony vocals. It was a new venture going into the heavy metal side of it, so it wasn't too bad, but starting to listening to the demos, because you've got to remember that they'd played these songs and recorded these songs on demo form, but not actually on a proper album with a proper record company.
Running Free was the first EMI released Iron Maiden single, and it came out to quite a big palaver. It was a very anthemic track. It was a new track. Most people hadn't heard it before when it hit the charts in the top 40, and they appeared on Top of the Pops and said, "We're playing it live, we're not going to buy."
It was the thought of going to do it that was scary. So when we got up there, we was all getting the ump. Because they wanted us to like lip sync and mime. We said, we ain't doing none of that. We don't have that. We ain't one of Poncy like toe rags up there. Like, no, not having it. So we agreed to play live, but it wasn't much louder than what we're speaking now. So it was absolute, it was a joke. But you just get on and do it. Oh shit! On the other stage, what was it, Spandau Ballet, giving us the evil eye, so we was like, yeah, go on mate, whatever some of you are after, and that was it, so we needed a punch up in the green room.
You got the floor manager, the engineer, the producer, and it's got to be quiet in there. Everything, you can hear a pin drop, and every artist on Top of the Pops, they mime, and they've got this little monitor in front of them, and back comes the track, and then they're miming, or they might even have a live vocal mic, but the actual backing of the track is coming through this monitor. And we started running through the song, and no, you can't do it. It was just pandemonium, and the engineers coming out with the headphones on, no, too loud. So what we did was we were using H&H amps at the time for this recording, and they've got like a master valve gain and a volume that you can back off. So basically what we did was we upped the gain, take the volume off, and then you can play that little riff, at a very low volume, but it still sounds really punchy and powerful. And then we just taped the drums down so they wasn't very loud and the cymbals wasn't too crashy. But yeah, we got away with it because slowly we brought it down to where the volume that they wanted. But just the funniest thing we ever saw, that while we were sitting on the edge of the stage and we were playing about with little things, Shakin' Stevens was on the next stage. I've told this story so many times. And he was doing This Old House, I think it was called, and he had these brand new trainers on. And he always danced about while he was singing. And the problem was that all you could hear coming from that stage was the squeaking of the trainers. The squeaking was louder than the actual monitor that his track was coming back at him there. So that's how quiet it is in that studio. If you've got a little pair of trainers squeaking, that's how quiet it is.
I spend the night in LA jail, listen to silence wail. They ain't got a thing on me. I'm running wild, I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free.
When I was writing this thing, it was really difficult because I had an idea of doing a song, but I wanted to have that sort of Gary Glitter drum beat to it, you know what I mean? That's how it came about. And then me and Steve started working on it, and it's really simple, you know, it's simple but catchy, but not sort of pop, really. You know, it wasn't supposed to be like that. It was just a song which just sort of came about. I think me and Steve must have wrote it in half an hour. We've done it, you know, some of these lyrics, I just knocked them off my head in about 10 minutes. So it was a weird experience, though, to sort of finally see something you've recorded and having to go and play it on national TV, or not play it as the case was, as you know, at such a quiet level. But it's a song about my life when I was growing up. You know, didn't really have much of anything then, and yeah, I sort of tried putting it in a different context. It's not sort of about me, but it's all, you know, certain bits and pieces of your life. You know, getting chased out of discos by other girls' boyfriends and things like that. Always had that trouble.
Running Free is probably very typical of what Maiden were about in the early days. It's very anthemic, it's got a good gallop to it, and of course gives an opportunity for fans to headbang or punch the air with their fists. So it's very much a metal song of its time. And we're talking about the beginning of the 1980s, when a new wave of British heavy metal was coming through, when metal entered what I would still term its golden period, certainly as far as British metal is concerned. And that was typical of Maiden. It actually accentuated all the great things about Maiden. Di'Arno's voice was perfectly suited because it wasn't a soar-away anthem. It was very punky, had a lot of energy to it. And because of that, Di'Arno could really deliver with a lot of force, backed up by a band who really did have a determination and could play, and it was very tightly delivered as well.
I think was probably the poppiest song that they had. It was catchy, and what with the sort of like the drum beat that everyone can sort of jump to and stamp their feet to.
Running Free charting would have only surprised, I think, you know, the self-decreed arbiters of taste of the time. You know, and the record industry, well, certainly these days, I mean, it's a place for wannabes and for people who think it's a cool place to work and really have got no interest in music. And it's run by lawyers who are only interested in money, lawyers and accountants that want money, you know. But back when Iron Maiden got their deal with EMI, there was still a semblance of the old industry left, where the actual music was more important. But you still had this sort of the influx of, you know, this whole, you know, England's obsession with pop music and the top 40, when in fact it doesn't make any money at all, and it was the rock bands like Iron Maiden that sold lots of albums and sold out loads of tours. That's where the real money was to be made, and yet it's just ignored, you know, by, you know, the media in general, kind of thing, or has been for a long time. So those kind of people would have been shocked that these noisy upstarts from East London, you know, had the temerity to bust into the charts with their first record. But no, if you look at it, and the fans wouldn't have been surprised, because they were going to see Iron Maiden all the time, and Maiden were getting great press coverage. You know, they've always had a good relationship with the press without cozying up to the press in any way, and a lot of that again is down to Rod Smallwood's management. Sometimes when you've got all those things fall into place, it's not that difficult for a record company to do its job properly.
I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free.
Over the years, Iron Maiden, well, more particularly Steve Harris, have been incredibly critical of the producer of their debut album, a guy called Will Malone. Now, this is a guy who'd worked with people like Black Sabbath and Todd Rundgren. You talk to Steve Harris, and he basically is hugely critical and negative about the job that Malone did. In fact, he effectively says Will Malone didn't produce it. He was sitting there reading a paper most of the time, completely indifferent to what was going on, and left Maiden to get on with it themselves.
Oh, there was a lot of fun in there as well, though, like, especially when it was all cocking up here and there, and left, right and centre and stuff like that. And sort of had about 4 or 5 attempts at doing like one track, you know. But yeah, that was interesting. It was the first time I'd ever really recorded as well, so we didn't really know what the hell was going on. The production on it was awful because this bloke Will Malone, I don't know what the hell he ever done. Something to Mike Oldfield's violin tune or something, I have no idea. But why the hell we got him in? The songs are great on that first album, it's just that the production's awful. It's just frustrating, that, it really was. But then again, as I said, we didn't know what the hell we was doing. You know, so we just went along with everything Will said. Well, that Pratt didn't know what he was doing either, so there you go. So it was really, it's really sad when I hear that album, because it could be so much better with the production on it. The songs are fantastic. But yeah, that was really quite tough, actually. You know, when you listen to it later on, you know what I mean? But doing the album itself was actually stressful, funny, and a definite eye-opener, because, you know, we've never done it before.
Will Malone did a great job, I think. It's not, you know, Iron Maiden isn't the best produced album in the world, but you don't expect it to be. What it is a great sounding Iron Maiden album, and it sets in stone what Iron Maiden were very much about then. It's a great launch pad for the band. It's raw, it's aggressive, it bristles with the live energy that was evident from the band's gigs at the time. And, you know, I mean, what more can you ask of a producer if he can capture what the band are about live in the studio?
The fact is that I believe Iron Maiden's debut album should have sounded the way it does, and that had they had a better production, maybe some of that youthful energy, some of that youthful zest could have been lost. I think the fact that Maiden were virtually left to their own devices helped make the album what it is. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment it was a brilliant psychological trick by Will Malone. Clearly it wasn't. How indifferent he was to the project, only Maiden and Will Malone really know. And I think over the years, perhaps his lack of a role has been exaggerated to a point where people are hypercritical of him. However, all I've got to say is you listen to the record, it's the way it should sound. If I had to choose one song, not just from the Iron Maiden album itself, but from Iron Maiden's history as definitive Maiden, it would always be Phantom of the Opera. It is my favourite Iron Maiden song because it's unlike so much else they did at the time, yet it is representative of everything Maiden can do. It's an epic, it's got a real breadth to it, it's got a gallop to it, it's got different sections, it's got a wonderful instrumental part that's beautifully played with lots of guitar and really is quite uplifting. And it's also got a real power and aggression to it. And it's got so many different elements, and they've combined it in a song which lasts 7 minutes plus, and at no point does it lose its focus.
Phantom of the Opera, for me, is not one of their better moments, but you can see that it's the direct predecessor of, say, Hallowed Be Thy Name, which is a classic song from Number of the Beast, and Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner from Power Slave, and the stuff from the new album, A Matter of Life and Death. So it's a very important song in tracking how the band's music started, where it came from. And I suppose it was fairly unusual at the time, because although it wasn't unusual to have 7-minute rock anthems, to have them played in that specific way, almost like a really good punk band playing a rock epic, that was almost unique for the time.
When I was given the tapes to learn, to take home and just run through parts, the riffs, the harmonies, the chord structures, that, because it's the longest song and it's got so many time changes in it, I think it's a bit of an anthem. So everyone liked it, you know, they liked it for the Lucozade advert and everything else. So, you know, I think that's why it's stayed a firm favourite. And it's also got that chant thing, which, again, recording it, we put all these harmonies on. And Rod walked in and went, sounds like Queen, get rid of some of them voices. So it's still raw, but it's still got them the little harmony, the two-part harmony a little bit that makes it sound bigger. But I think that's it. It's just an anthem. It's such a great song. I think it was one of the hardest to learn as well.
Throughout the whole thing, with its different elements and different parts, in a way, this is Iron Maiden. It's got a progressive feel, which of course Maiden were to develop so many years later. And to this day, I think it remains the definitive Iron Maiden track. Lots of people will disagree. Everyone's got their favourites. This is my personal favourite, but it actually became, and it still remains, one of those moments that when it comes on, everyone just cheers because it's so much representative of a golden period, and not just in Maiden's history, but in metal's history.
I suppose what's slightly unique about Phantom of the Opera is that, I mean, Maiden are a heavy metal band, and then, you know, they wouldn't deny it, no one else is going. They're never one of these bands that ever turned around and went, well, we're not actually heavy metal. You know, they're heavy metal, that's it, end of story. However, Steve Harris is a huge progressive rock fan, and that influence can be heard at various points throughout their career. It was a lot less prevalent in the early days, Steve's fondness for quirky time changes and men who played flute standing on one leg. But I suppose if you listen to the Phantom of the Opera and the way that it's sort of structured, it's taking, you know, that raw, aggressive metal sound that Maiden could compact very nicely into a 3.5, 4 minute song. It's just stretching the boundaries a little bit. I think it's Maiden saying, hey, you know, we can do all that, but we can do this as well.
Oh, we all got on all right. The thing is like Iron Maiden's always been Steve's band, right from day one. I mean, he had the majority of the songwriting and everything. I had a few other good songs as well, but they didn't all make it through, obviously. So yeah, it's a bit sort of one side on Steve's, but we trusted him because, you know, he's the one who had that just tunnel vision of how it should be and all that. You know, the others, we all contributed, obviously, but it was definitely Steve's baby. So, yeah, so you sort of overlook things like that. It did get a bit frustrating sometimes when you think, well, I've got a better song than that one, you know, but there you go, we did. Me and Steve and our girlfriends all used to go out quite a bit together. Me, Dave and Clive were inseparable, always out on, you know, some sort of mischief, I don't know. Yeah, we done that. And then when Dennis sort of came into the band, you know, he was a bit older, and I don't know, it sort of didn't seem right, you know what I mean? Great guy then, you know, at the times, but it's only later in these last couple of years I've heard other things about him, but anyway, so you know, there's no love lost between us, to be honest with you. But yeah, I don't know. He didn't really fit in as a complete unit. You know what I mean?
Rod knew how I felt regarding being closed in and claustrophobic with a band. I liked a bit of freedom, you know, travel with a crew one day, travel myself, you know. But he wanted to keep everyone together. He was worried in case people found out that I listened to the Eagles. My only answer to that is that if you're on tour with a heavy metal band as big as Maiden, it's like, you know, you're listening to that all day, and then you do a gig in the evening, and then you go back to your hotel room and you put Motorhead on. I just think that's overkill. So I just love easy listening music when you've been travelling all day, playing loud music all night, going absolutely potty. and then you get back and put a bit of George Benson on or a bit of Eagles just to calm down, and Rod seemed to think that I wasn't into the band 100%. He did say to me, he said, I can't fault your work, what you contribute, I can't fault any of it. He said, but we're worried because I just didn't, he seemed to think I just wasn't heavy metal enough. And, he probably may be right, he probably is right. Individually, yeah, they were all different. Deano was his own person, he does what he wants, and, Dave, you want to pick Dave Murray up and cuddle him, because he was like just a big smile on his face all the time. He never said anything, he was so quiet. Whereas Steve was like the serious one, and you could see it in Steve's body language and his eyes that he's a serious person. And no doubt, because if you've written sort of like nearly 2 albums worth of songs and you've just signed to EMI, you don't want to make a mistake. So I imagine he found it hard to relax. Every now and again, he would let himself go a little bit, but he was very serious most of the time. I suppose because he saw it as, because it is his band, he saw it that, if he lets his guard down, someone's going to, interfere. So, yeah, he was the serious one out of the 3, but, they were all okay,
It's funny because I sort of always compared the early Iron Maiden days to, funny enough, like to the Ramones, because they was all sort of, it was like the gang of brothers, you know what I mean? And we was like that in them days. It was pretty cool, actually.
There is no question whatsoever that the history of Iron Maiden is completely wrapped up with Eddie. That without Eddie, Iron Maiden may not have made the huge impact that they went on to do for so many years. Eddie has become, and with all due respect to Ozzy and Lemmy, the iconic metal figure.
Heavy metal's always had a bit of a cartoon element to it, so I think Maiden capitalised on that kind of idea from the start. First time I saw Iron Maiden at the Soundhouse in Kingsbury in North London, Eddie was really no more than a plank of wood, to be honest with you. It was a plank of wood with a skull on, and at the end of the show, he would kind of dribble blood, and there'd be this, sort of half-hearted dry ice going on, and the blood would drip on the drummer. At that point, it was a guy called Clive Burr. So Eddie had very, very humble beginnings, but has subsequently developed not only on the albums and the single sleeves, but as this kind of giant marauding monster on stage.
I'm a huge fan of Derek Riggs's work. And we all know that, Eddie was actually a character Derek Riggs had drawn as a punk, and Derek was not really into heavy metal per se, and he created this kind of punk character, but Rod Smallwood had seen that, and that's going to be, because it tied in with a character that Maiden already using on a backdrop, that one of their technicians would have bright lights in the eyes and dry ice coming out the mouth, and so they had this kind of figurehead, and the fact that they could transpose it from the sort of, I suppose it was quite haphazardly put together creation on stage into something that is now ingrained in heavy metal legend, was a masterstroke in a way, because again, it builds that identity. I can tell you stories of working for magazines where I've been abroad and I've had a copy of the magazine and it's had like a double-page advert from Iron Maiden, and I've had Maiden fans asking me if they can buy that copy off of me there and then, because it's got some artwork in it that they probably won't see in their country. And that's how important that, on both sides of the thing, is how important it has been to Iron Maiden, how important it is to the fans as well, this sort of identifying creation that they've been allowed to play with over many album sleeves. But the first one is the one that really has that major impact.
The one track that's really stood the test of time on the Iron Maiden album is the track Iron Maiden itself. I think Maiden's bass player Steve Harris has said, I cannot remember a single show we've ever played where we haven't closed the show with Iron Maiden. So, you know, that's just a phenomenal thing, really. This particular track on the debut album came out in 1980. They're still playing it, you know, more than 25 years down the line. God knows how many thousands of shows later. So that's the one that's really, you know, stood in there and hung in there throughout Maiden's career.
You get into it when you're on stage, don't you? It's like when I'm sitting there looking at my set list, I'm like, oh no, I really don't want to be doing this anymore. I think I'll go and work at McDonald's or something like that. But nah, you get caught up in the moment, don't you? It's like, as much as I keep saying I'm pissed off with singing these songs even now, and I'm even getting pissed off with my own stuff at the minute. I want to sort of change all my set list round eventually, because we've been doing the same thing. So, yeah, but I don't do Iron Maiden. That's the one thing I don't do. They've asked me to do it a couple of times here and there, and I can have always given in. Just keep the fans happy. And I thought, hang on, I ain't doing myself no favours here either, and I won't sing the Iron Maiden bit, because it's about, you know, that's your personal thing with the band, you know. I mean, so when it comes to singing the chorus, I never do. I just hold the mic out and that's it, let them do it, because I don't feel right singing it. You know what I mean?
When Killers, Iron Maiden's second album, came out in 1981, I think it split opinions. I was in a minority at the time in loving the record, and still do to this day, but an awful lot of people felt it was a disappointing follow-up. And a lot of people pointed to the fact that, with the exception of Murders in the Rue Morgue and Killers itself, all those tracks had been around for the debut, yet hadn't been put on the debut, so it must be a case of leftovers. No, absolutely not. I think part of the reason why Maiden didn't put those tracks on the debut was because a lot of them were more complex, and when really a second album set of songs, not a debut album. I can't see something like Innocent Exile or Drifter really belonging on the debut, or certainly Genghis Khan. Those tracks belonged to a second album when things had developed and maybe the maturity had taken over a little bit. And of course Adrian Smith by this point had come in on guitar, replacing Dennis Stratton, and I think he gave Maiden a lot more focus and a lot more power, whereas Dennis Stratton was a little too laid back in certain respects. And the other crucial change was the arrival of Martin Birch as producer. Will Maloney produced the debut, and to this day Steve Harris still insists Will Maloney did a terrible job on the debut. Well, I think the debut is what it is, and quite honestly didn't need a better production, but the second album certainly did. So Martin Birch took it to another level. I would say Killers was a really strong follow-up, and over the years I think people have grown to love Killers and really appreciate what it had and what it did for Maiden.
Obviously we've been touring all over the world by then, you know, we've been to Japan and everything, and the States, and we've been playing, you know, like Hammersmith Odeon, we've gone right up, we're like, oh blimey. I think we want to keep the format pretty much the same as the first album, you know, because that's all we knew how to do. But the songs were getting a little bit more slower, and dare I say a bit more melodic. So there wasn't that urgency, you know, so much urgency. But we had Martin Birch then as well as producer, and he was fantastic. Not that I'd heard a lot of his stuff, to be quite honest with you, because I didn't really listen to bands like Deep Purple and even Whitesnake and all that stuff, you know, all that sort of music. But no, I did have a listen after, you know, told me this is what he does and that, and you know, I was really quite happy to work with him. He sort of definitely got me disciplined, put it that way. You know, how to approach things in certain ways. I did learn quite a bit from Martin Birch, to be quite honest with you. It's difficult. It was that thing about whether the second album, the music was changing quite a bit, yeah, and I was sort of not really, really happy with it, and I didn't think I was giving 100% because I was losing interest. And you can't do that in a band like Iron Maiden. You've all got to be like 100% there and focused on everything, and I wasn't. And to get me over the shock of that happening to me, because that came a bit of a surprise, to be honest with you, it was you got to find other ways to fill the void, isn't it? And I was sort of, excuse me, I'm starving. Drinking, snorting coke and stuff like that. Thinking that that's sort of going to help sort of fill in the bits that are missing, you know what I mean? And it wasn't in any way, shape or form, but I knew it was all building up to the day I wanted to walk in there and sort of say, this has got to end. And we all came to an amicable agreement when it did it, you know, because I didn't want to let the band down, I didn't want to let the fans down, I certainly didn't want to let myself down, you know. I let myself down in a lot of ways, actually, you know, like fucking about and all that stuff and that, and, you know, I ain't no angel, you know, still ponce about now, every now and again, don't you, but like you do it, but, no, I'd lost my focus with that altogether, and on that, this is crap, so it all had to stop. For the band's sake and for my own.
Iron Maiden is a classic album. You have to say it's a classic album because it's produced so much important material, so much influential material. We mustn't forget that Iron Maiden were the main player in what is now known as the new wave of British heavy metal. There were loads of bands that came out in the wake of that album that were trying to play that kind of music. We've forgotten the majority of them. They didn't stick around. There are still bands today that try and play that kind of aggressive, nuts and bolts heavy metal. There's still a market for that. So even though the album wasn't well produced, it sounds raw, it sounds thrown together, it sounds hurried, because it was all those things. But even with that in mind, you have to say it's a classic because it established Iron Maiden and it delivered a hell of a lot of good material that people still want to hear today.
I suppose everyone's going to have their own take, aren't they, really, on the debut album stood the test of time. To these is yes, because I can still put it on and still get something out of it to this day. And I do, you know, it's sort of, you know, when you want to expel some energy, you know, it's a great album to put on.
I'm running free. I'm running free, yeah. I'm running free.
We just made one little tiny crack, really. I mean, we got loads of work to do. I mean, all right, we can sell out most of the major venues in Britain. We got the rest of the bleeding world to go, yeah? We got to start all back in square one again.
It's something I'm proud of, and I was happy to be a part of it. But I think it's also sometimes it's sort of like a millstone around your neck. You just can't get away with it. It's always going to be Pauliano ex-Iron Maiden saying, like, fuck off, you know, I've got, you know, I've had plenty of records out myself. I do very well. I'm touring all over the world. I'm like, God, this is nuts. But it's always got to be that ex-Iron Maiden singer. Oh, and you go up on stage and you know, like you've got playing your own new record or something like that, and all sharing their rough child at the back and all running for me and all fuck off. It gets on your nerves. But then when it comes around to playing the song, totally there then. It's not a problem.